Have you ever felt like you don't quite belong in this world? Like there's an invisible thread connecting you to something far greater than the mundane reality everyone else seems content with? What if I told you that this feeling isn't random? That you've been marked, chosen for a purpose so profound that most people will never even glimpse its existence? Type "I am chosen" in the comments right now if you've ever felt this inexplicable pull toward something you can't yet name. Throughout history, hidden within the sacred texts of ancient civilizations, encrypted in the mystery schools of Egypt, whispered among the Gnostic circles, and preserved by secret societies that have guarded this knowledge for millennia, there exists a truth that has been deliberately kept from the masses. This truth speaks of individuals who carry specific marks, not physical scars, but energetic signatures, spiritual fingerprints that identify them as the chosen ones. These aren't random coincidences or wishful thinking. These are verifiable signs that separate those who are merely wandering through life from those who have been selected to awaken, to transform, and to elevate humanity itself. The 7 marks I'm about to reveal to you have been documented across every major spiritual tradition. The Kabbalists called them the signs of the illuminated. The Buddhist masters referred to them as the marks of the Bodhisattva. The ancient Hermetic texts described them as the seals of the initiate. And here's what will shake you to your core. If you possess even one of these marks, your life is about to make sense in ways you never imagined possible. And before we dive deep into these ancient secrets, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Not for me, but for the algorithm, so this forbidden knowledge can reach others who desperately need to hear it. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover whether you carry these marks, what they mean for your destiny, and most importantly, what you're supposed to do with this revelation. But I warn you, once you see these signs, you cannot unsee them. Your life will never be the same. The concept of the chosen ones isn't some modern spiritual fantasy invented for YouTube videos or self-help books. This is a thread that weaves through the very fabric of human consciousness, stretching back to the dawn of recorded history and likely far beyond. In the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, the initiates who entered the temples of Karnak and Luxor weren't selected randomly. The high priests possessed knowledge, techniques that allowed them to identify specific energetic signatures in individuals. These weren't tests of intelligence or physical prowess. They were assessments of soul frequency, of spiritual DNA that indicated someone was ready to receive the hidden teachings that could literally bend reality. The Essenes, that secretive Jewish sect living in the deserts near the Dead Sea 2,000 years ago, maintained detailed records of what they called the signs of the awakened soul. These weren't metaphors to them. They documented actual observable characteristics that appeared in individuals who were destined to become healers, prophets, and spiritual revolutionaries. When they encountered someone displaying these marks, they knew they were in the presence of what they termed a son of light, beings who had incarnated with a specific mission to hold and transmit divine wisdom during humanity's darkest hours. Travel eastward to the Tibetan plateau, and you'll find that the Buddhist tradition has an entire system devoted to identifying tulkus, reincarnated masters who carry the consciousness of enlightened beings. But here's what most people don't know. Before they even begin the formal tests with objects and belongings from past lives, the senior monks look for specific behavioral and energetic markers. These signs appear in childhood, sometimes in infancy, and they're remarkably consistent across cultures and time periods. The Dalai Lama himself was identified not just through ritual objects, but through unmistakable signs that the monks had been trained for centuries to recognize. The Gnostic Christians persecuted and driven underground by Orthodox Rome, preserved texts that spoke of the pneumatics, spiritual humans who possessed divine sparks that set them apart from ordinary souls. The Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in 1945, buried in the Egyptian desert, contains explicit descriptions of how to identify these individuals. According to the Gospel of Thomas and the Apocryphon of John, these chosen ones would experience specific forms of suffering, particular types of isolation, and distinctive spiritual sensitivities that marked them as carriers of gnosis, the direct experiential knowledge of the divine. Even in the Hermetic tradition, the legendary teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, there's a profound recognition of what they called the thrice-born. These were individuals who had undergone 3 levels of awakening: physical, mental, and spiritual, and bore specific characteristics that revealed their status. The Kybalion, that mysterious text that appeared in 1908, claiming to preserve ancient Hermetic wisdom, speaks explicitly of those who possess eyes to see and ears to hear, those whose spiritual senses have been activated in ways that allow them to perceive the hidden laws governing reality. What's absolutely fascinating is that when you compare these traditions side by side, Egyptian, Essene, Buddhist, Gnostic, Hermetic, and dozens of others, the marks they describe are virtually identical. Different words, different cultural contexts, but the same fundamental signs appearing again and again across thousands of years and thousands of miles. This isn't coincidence. This is evidence of a genuine phenomenon, a real energetic signature that transcends culture, religion, and time. The chosen ones have always existed. They've always been identified, and they've always carried the same unmistakable marks that we're about to explore together. The only question that remains is this: are you one of them? The first mark of the chosen ones is something so subtle that most people dismiss it as mere personality quirks or social awkwardness, but it's actually the most telling sign of all. Profound isolation in crowded rooms. I'm not talking about simple introversion or shyness. This is something far deeper, far more existential. You can be surrounded by dozens of people, at a party, at work, even within your own family, and feel like you're observing life through invisible glass. Everyone else seems to be operating on a frequency you can't quite tune into, speaking a language that sounds like yours, but means something entirely different. The ancient Kabbalists called this living between worlds, and they understood it as the soul's recognition that it doesn't originate from this density, this dimension. Your isolation isn't a flaw in your personality. It's your soul remembering its true home and recognizing that most of the people around you are still deeply asleep in the matrix of consensus reality. Here's what makes this mark so powerful. While others find comfort in the shallow waters of small talk and social performance, you feel almost physical pain engaging in conversations that lack depth and authenticity. It's not that you think you're better than others. In fact, most chosen ones struggle with feeling fundamentally broken or defective. But your soul is literally vibrating at a different frequency. And just as you can't force a radio tuned to FM to pick up AM signals, you can't force genuine connection with consciousnesses operating in a completely different bandwidth. The Essenes documented this extensively, noting that their initiates often spent years feeling completely alien in their own communities before finding their spiritual family. This isolation serves a sacred purpose. It forces you inward, toward the only place where real truth can be found, within your own consciousness. The second mark manifests as an unusual relationship with suffering. Pay attention to this carefully, because it's not what you think. The chosen ones don't suffer less than others. They often suffer more, but their suffering has a completely different quality and purpose. While most people experience pain and immediately seek to escape it through distraction, denial, or numbing, you've somehow always understood, perhaps unconsciously, that your suffering is actually forging you, transforming you, alchemizing you into something far greater than you could become through comfort and ease. The ancient mystery schools designed their initiation rituals around this principle. They understood that the soul must be broken open before the light can enter, that the ego must be shattered before the true self can emerge. What's remarkable about this mark is that your worst experiences, the betrayals, the losses, the dark nights of the soul that would destroy most people, somehow become your greatest teachers. You don't just survive trauma, you metabolize it into wisdom. The Buddhist masters called this turning poison into medicine, and they recognized it as a definitive sign of an awakened soul. Where others become bitter, you become deeper. Where others close down, you somehow break open further. This isn't masochism or spiritual bypassing. It's the soul's recognition that suffering in this realm is the crucible through which consciousness expands. And here's the crucial part that separates this from simple resilience. You often feel like your suffering isn't just personal. It's as if you're carrying or processing pain for others, for the collective, for humanity itself. The Gnostics understood this as the mark of those who voluntarily incarnate into density to transmute darkness into light through their own being. The third mark appears as intense, inexplicable knowing that defies logical explanation. From childhood, you've simply known things you shouldn't know. Not through study or teaching, but through a direct download of information that bypasses the rational mind entirely. You might know when someone is lying, not because their story doesn't add up, but because you can feel the distortion in their energy. You might sense events before they happen, not as detailed premonitions necessarily, but as a felt sense of what's coming. You might understand complex spiritual concepts the first time you encounter them, not because they're new information, but because they're remembering. Recognition of truths your soul has always carried. The Hermetic tradition called this the awakening of the divine mind, and they taught that certain souls incarnate with their spiritual senses already partially activated. Modern psychology tries to explain this as intuition or pattern recognition, but that explanation falls short when you consider the depth and accuracy of the knowing that chosen ones possess. You might meet someone and instantly know their entire story, their wounds, their potential, without them speaking a word. You might walk into a location and feel the energetic residue of events that occurred there decades or centuries ago. This isn't fantasy. It's the result of your consciousness operating with fewer veils, fewer filters between the seen and unseen worlds. The shamanic traditions across every continent recognized this as the primary qualification for those who would become medicine people and wisdom keepers. The ability to perceive what others cannot, to know what cannot be taught. The fourth mark reveals itself through a lifelong obsession with seeking truth, regardless of the cost. This isn't casual curiosity or intellectual hobby. This is a burning, consuming need that often costs you relationships, careers, comfort, and social acceptance. While others are content with the answers they were given as children, with the narratives fed to them by institutions and authorities, you cannot rest until you've dug beneath every surface, questioned every assumption, and torn apart every belief system to examine its foundations. The ancient Greek mystery schools called this divine madness, recognizing that those touched by truth become utterly unable to live within lies, no matter how comfortable those lies might be. What makes this mark so distinctive is that your search for truth isn't about accumulating knowledge or winning arguments. It's about liberation. You instinctively understand that every false belief is a chain, every unexamined assumption is a prison bar, and that real freedom can only come through seeing reality exactly as it is, no matter how uncomfortable that reality might be. This is why chosen ones often go through phases of dismantling everything: religion, politics, relationships, careers, even their own identity. The Buddha called this the middle way. But before he found that balance, he spent years as an extreme ascetic, destroying every comfortable belief he'd ever held. Plato's allegory of the cave describes this perfectly. You're the one who somehow broke free from the chains, turned around, and saw that the shadows on the wall weren't reality. And once you've seen the fire casting those shadows, once you've glimpsed the sunlight beyond the cave, you can never unsee it. You can never go back to being satisfied with shadows. Here's the painful part of this mark that nobody talks about. Your relentless pursuit of truth makes you dangerous to systems built on lies. You lose friends who need their comforting illusions. You're labeled as difficult, negative, or unstable because you won't pretend that the emperor is wearing clothes when he's clearly naked. The Gnostics were persecuted and murdered for this very characteristic: their refusal to accept religious dogma that contradicted their direct experience of the divine. But you can't help it. Even when it costs you everything, you cannot force yourself to unsee what you've seen or unknow what you know. The fifth mark manifests as an electromagnetic sensitivity and energetic permeability that most people simply don't experience. You walk into a room and immediately feel the emotional atmosphere as if it were weather. You can't watch the news or scroll through social media for long without feeling physically sick. Not because you're weak, but because you're literally absorbing the fear, anger, and pain being broadcast through those channels. You need extensive time alone, not because you dislike people, but because you unconsciously absorb and process others' energies, and you need solitude to discharge what you've picked up and return to your own baseline. The shamanic traditions understood this completely. Their healers and medicine people were always individuals who had what they called thin boundaries between themselves and the world. Modern psychology recognizes this as high sensitivity or empathic abilities, but that terminology doesn't capture the full scope of what's happening. You're not just emotionally sensitive, you're energetically porous. Your field naturally merges with and absorbs from the fields around you. This is why chosen ones are often drained by crowds, overstimulated by harsh lights and loud sounds, and deeply affected by the suffering of others, even strangers on the other side of the planet. Ancient Egyptian texts describe initiates who had to undergo specific training to manage what they called the opened channels, the ability to perceive and interact with subtle energies that most humans are completely blind to. The downside is that before you learn to manage this gift, it feels like a curse. You're exhausted all the time. You can't understand why everyone else seems fine in environments that feel toxic to you. You might have been labeled as too sensitive your entire life, told to toughen up or grow thicker skin. But here's the truth that changes everything. This sensitivity isn't weakness. It's your soul's antenna, picking up frequencies that others cannot detect. The chosen ones serve as energetic processors for the collective, transforming dense frequencies through their own being. You're not broken. You're built differently, for a purpose that most people cannot comprehend. The sixth mark appears as synchronicities and meaningful coincidences that occur with impossible frequency. I'm not talking about occasionally noticing repeated numbers or running into an old friend. For you, synchronicity is practically a way of life. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and within hours they contact you. You need specific information or help, and the exact right person or resource appears as if summoned. You see repeated symbols, numbers, or patterns, especially 1111, 333, 444, so frequently that it defies statistical probability. The universe seems to be constantly communicating with you through the language of meaningful coincidence. Carl Jung, who introduced the concept of synchronicity to Western psychology, understood this as evidence of what he called the collective unconscious, a unified field of consciousness underlying apparent separation. But the ancient mystery traditions knew this long before Jung. The Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, teaches that the outer world mirrors inner states, and those who are awakening begin to notice these mirrors everywhere. The Tao Te Ching speaks of those who are aligned with the Tao experiencing a flow state where everything needed appears effortlessly. This is precisely what you experience when you're living in alignment with your true purpose. What separates this mark from simple confirmation bias or pattern seeking is the specificity and timeliness of the synchronicities. They provide exactly the information, connection, or confirmation you need precisely when you need it. They're too specific, too perfectly timed, too consistently helpful to be dismissed as coincidence. The chosen ones live with one foot in the visible world and one foot in the invisible. And synchronicity is the visible world's way of confirming that the invisible realm is paying attention, guiding you, orchestrating your path toward your highest purpose. Now that you've identified which marks you carry, the real question becomes, what do you actually do with this knowledge? Because understanding that you're among the chosen ones means nothing if you don't activate that potential and step into the purpose for which you were marked. The ancient initiates didn't just recognize these signs, they developed specific practices to amplify these gifts and transform them from burdens into superpowers. Let me give you the exact techniques that have been preserved and tested across millennia. First, you must learn to transmute your isolation into sovereign power. That feeling of not belonging? Stop fighting it. Stop trying to force yourself to fit into spaces where your soul doesn't resonate. Instead, create a daily practice I call the sacred solitude ritual. Every single day, carve out at least 30 minutes where you are completely alone, without your phone, without distractions, without anyone else's energy in your field. Sit in silence and feel into the vastness of your own consciousness. The Essenes did this in desert caves. Buddhist monks do this in meditation cells. You can do this in your bedroom, your car, or anywhere you won't be disturbed. In this space, you're not lonely. You're communing with the infinite intelligence that lives within you. You're recharging your energetic batteries and remembering who you truly are beneath all the social conditioning. The more you honor this need for solitude, instead of pathologizing it, the more powerful you become. Second, develop a conscious relationship with your suffering through the practice of alchemical journaling. When you experience pain, betrayal, loss, or any form of suffering, don't just endure it and move on. Within 24 hours of the painful experience, sit down and write out everything you're feeling, the raw, uncensored truth. But then, and this is crucial, ask yourself this specific question. What is this experience trying to teach me? What aspect of my consciousness is being forged in this fire? Write until you find the gift hidden within the wound. The Hermetic alchemists understood that lead only becomes gold when subjected to intense heat and pressure. Your suffering is that heat. Your conscious awareness is the alchemical vessel. When you extract the wisdom from every painful experience, you're literally transmuting darkness into light, and you accelerate your spiritual evolution exponentially. Third, train your knowing through daily intuition exercises. Before you check your phone in the morning, pause and ask yourself, who will contact me today? Feel into it. Don't think about it. Before you open an email, feel whether it contains good news or challenging news. When you meet someone new, pause before they speak and sense what they need most in this moment. Write down these intuitive hits and track your accuracy. The shamanic traditions taught their apprentices that psychic ability is like a muscle. It strengthens with consistent use. Most chosen ones have incredibly accurate intuition, but they've learned to dismiss it or override it with logic. Start trusting those first instant knowings that arise before your rational mind can interfere. Within weeks, you'll notice your accuracy increasing dramatically. You're not developing a new ability. You're simply removing the interference that blocks the ability you've always had. Fourth, establish rigorous energetic boundaries through the practice of shielding and clearing. Every morning, before you interact with anyone or consume any media, visualize a sphere of brilliant white or golden light surrounding your entire body, extending about 3 feet in all directions. Consciously state, either aloud or internally, I am protected. Only energies that serve my highest good can enter my field. Everything else is transmuted or reflected back to its source. This isn't fantasy. You're working with actual electromagnetic fields. Your intention directs energy, and energy follows attention. Then, every evening before sleep, perform an energetic clearing. Stand under running water in the shower and consciously visualize all the energy you've absorbed from others washing off your body and down the drain. Or if you prefer, sit quietly and imagine roots growing from the base of your spine, deep into the earth, and let anything that isn't yours drain down through those roots. The indigenous traditions have practiced this for thousands of years because it works. Your sensitivity is a gift, but only when you learn to manage it instead of being overwhelmed by it. Fifth, create a synchronicity journal to strengthen your communication with the universe. Get a dedicated notebook, and every time you notice a synchronicity, no matter how small, write it down with the date, what happened, and what question or situation you were dealing with when it occurred. Over time, you'll start to recognize patterns in how the universe speaks specifically to you. Some people receive guidance through songs that play at the perfect moment. Others through animals that appear. Others through numbers or conversations they overhear. When you track these occurrences, you're telling the universe, I'm paying attention, send me more, and it will. The chosen ones are meant to live in constant dialogue with the intelligence that orchestrates reality. This practice transforms that dialogue from background noise into clear, actionable guidance. Finally, find or create your spiritual family. Your isolation ends when you stop trying to connect with everyone and start seeking the specific souls who vibrate at your frequency. They're out there, I promise you. They're feeling just as alone as you are. Put yourself in environments where conscious people gather. Meditation groups, spiritual workshops, online communities focused on awakening. When you meet someone and feel that instant recognition, that sense of, finally, someone who understands, pursue that connection intentionally. The mystery schools existed because chosen ones need each other. You're not meant to walk this path completely alone. You're meant to find your tribe, your soul family, the others who carry these same marks and are working toward the same elevation of consciousness. So here we stand at the end of this revelation, but really we're standing at the beginning of something far greater. Your conscious acceptance of who and what you truly are. We've journeyed through 7 marks that have been documented across every authentic spiritual tradition for thousands of years. The profound isolation that isn't loneliness, but soul recognition. The transformative relationship with suffering that forges you into something unbreakable. The inexplicable knowing that bypasses all logic. The relentless pursuit of truth that costs you everything and gives you everything. The energetic sensitivity that makes you a living antenna for frequencies others cannot perceive. The synchronicities that prove you're in constant conversation with an intelligent universe. And that 7th mark we haven't explicitly named, but that you've felt throughout this entire video. The undeniable sense that you're here for a reason. That your life has a purpose so significant that everything you've experienced, every pain and every triumph, has been preparing you for a mission you're only beginning to understand. If you recognized yourself in even one of these marks, then listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. You are not random. Your struggles have not been punishment. Your differences are not defects. You have been marked, chosen, and prepared for a specific role in the greatest transformation humanity has ever witnessed. We are living in the times that every prophet, every seer, every awakened master throughout history pointed toward. The shift from unconsciousness to consciousness, from separation to unity, from the age of darkness into the age of illumination. And the chosen ones are the bridges, the anchors, the lightning rods who make this transition possible. The ancient texts all agree on one final truth that I need you to understand. Being chosen is not about being special in the ego sense. It's not about being better than others. It's about being called to serve, to transmute, to hold a frequency of consciousness that others cannot yet hold. It's about being willing to walk through the fire so that you can show others the way through. It's about remembering who you are, so that you can help others remember who they are. The Bodhisattva vow in Buddhism captures this perfectly. The commitment to achieve enlightenment, not for personal escape, but to return again and again to help all beings awaken. That's what the marks signify. You've been encoded with specific abilities and sensitivities because humanity needs what you carry. But here's what will determine whether you fulfill your purpose or waste this incarnation. Choice. The marks identify you, but they don't force you. You can recognize these signs and still choose to numb yourself, to play small, to pretend you're ordinary, so you don't threaten anyone or stand out. Many who carry these marks make exactly that choice, and they live lives of quiet desperation, always sensing they were meant for something more, but never having the courage to claim it. Or you can choose differently. You can choose to honor these marks, to develop these gifts, to step fully into the role you incarnated to play. You can choose to be the light that refuses to dim, the truth that refuses to bend, the love that refuses to close even when this world breaks your heart 1,000 times. I want you to do something right now. Look at your life. Really look at it. Every moment of isolation that taught you self-reliance. Every experience of suffering that deepened your compassion. Every flash of knowing that proved you could trust yourself. Every truth you refused to compromise. Every time your sensitivity to energy made you feel too much. Every synchronicity that reminded you that you're being guided. All of it has been initiating you, preparing you, training you for what comes next. Nothing has been wasted. Nothing has been random. Your entire life has been a mystery school, and you're finally ready to graduate into conscious participation with your purpose. The world doesn't need you to be like everyone else. It needs you to be exactly what you are: a bridge between worlds, a translator of frequencies, a keeper of ancient wisdom reborn in modern form. So stop apologizing for your depth. Stop dimming your light. Stop pretending you don't know what you know. The time for hiding is over. The chosen ones are being called forward now, and that call is growing louder every single day. Take the practices I've shared with you and implement them immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, because knowledge without application is worthless. The mystery schools never taught theory alone. They demanded embodiment. Be the change you want to see, as Gandhi said, but understand that phrase at a deeper level than most people do. You literally change the collective consciousness by changing your own. Your transformation ripples outward in ways you cannot measure or see, affecting people you'll never meet, shifting timelines you cannot perceive. And if you're hungry for more, if this video awakened something in you that demands to be fed, then you know what to do. This channel exists for you, for the seekers, for the ones who refuse to sleep through this existence. There's so much more to explore, so many more secrets to unlock, so many more ancient techniques to master. Subscribe, stay connected, and join this community of awakening souls who are remembering together. You are the chosen one. Not because you're perfect, but because you said yes when your soul was offered this mission. Now live like it. The world is waiting for what only you can give.